Welcome back to another episode of Ball Knowledge Podcast. Sadly, we cannot be graced by Jonah's presence today because he has somehow managed to potentially tear his meniscus and had to go to urgent care. In this episode with Hal Morris, who is a Reds legend, we talked about his storied MLB career and how he got into scouting, and also some tips for young baseball players. Please like and subscribe and enjoy. Thank you. Welcome to another episode of Ball Knowledge. Here with 1990 World Series champion Hal Morris for the Cincinnati Reds. He had a 13-year career. We're excited to have you. Anything to say?
Isaac, happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I guess we could get started real quickly. Can you just give us a brief summary of how you got into baseball?
Sure. I don't remember ever not playing baseball, to be honest with you. My dad was a very good baseball player. He played football and baseball at Davidson, and then my great uncle had played in the big leagues for the Washington Senators in the 30s and the 40s, and his name was Buddy Lewis. So it was kind of, we were a family of ball players, and I kind of took up the family profession early. My folks would tell stories about me hitting balls were the garage when I was 3 years old, wiffle balls. So we played a lot of wiffle ball, and my dad was my arch nemesis because he could make the ball move all over the place. So we had a good time with it. Again, I always played. My brother played professionally for a long time, so that's just kind of what we did.
Well, growing up in Munster, you were a multi-sport athlete playing tennis, basketball, and baseball. Did you ever want to go play at a higher level in any other sport besides baseball?
Honestly, not really. When I was growing up in the 70s, we didn't have video games, we didn't have computers. We just played in the neighborhood. Basically, you got out from school and you went out if the weather allowed. You played whatever sports you could, whatever if it was dry, and then someone's mom would call you when it got dark, say, "Hey, you got to come home and have dinner." And that's when we would go. That's when we go home. So we played a little bit of everything. So growing up, swam competitively till I was in eighth grade. Played football till I was in eighth grade. We played a little hockey, and then when I got to high school, I decided to play tennis, basketball, and baseball because in Indiana we play tennis in the fall, and my dad and I were concerned about my getting hurt playing football. I actually got probably recruited more to play basketball at times than I did baseball, and I wasn't a good basketball player per se. But I actually think that if I had played tennis, concentrated on it from an early age, I could have been a decent tennis player. But baseball was my true love, and I just love hitting the ball, and there was no other place I'd rather be than out there on a field taking some hacks.
So what was it like then getting recruited by Michigan, or what made you decide to go to the best school on the planet?
Well, I agree with that assessment. I was actually going to go to Davidson. I had my room assignment. I was all ready to go, and I was going to play baseball and basketball down there. I had met with the basketball coach obviously the baseball coach was aware, was ready to have me.
There's a pretty good basketball player that came out of Davidson,
Absolutely. Listen, people, but he could shoot, boy. But late in the summer before I was going to start school, I just decided I wanted to try to go play at a more competitive baseball school. And I had applied to Michigan in the fall, and I called the coach and said, "Hey, if you could still give me a dorm room, I will come and I will walk on. I'll pay for my school." And that's what I did. At the last minute, now the people at Davidson were real thrilled with me, but I made the right move by going to Ann Arbor.
So then what was it like then being a walk-on when you're obviously with a bunch of other players who probably got scholarships, who are like you're like the low man on the totem pole. So how do you build your way up to, being really good and getting the respect to coaches?
Well, honestly, I honestly didn't realize how good we were up there. I mean, our shortstop's in the Hall of Fame. I played with another six big leaguers. Another 10 guys played in AAA. I mean, everyone that played there played professionally for the most part at some level. Um, but I had very modest goals at all times. You know, my first goal was to be able to hit on the field with all the rest of the guys, because the walk-ons they would hit us. We'd hit in the cage down the third baseline, and after a couple weeks, they let me hit on the field, and they liked what they were seeing. So my next goal was to be able to get into an inter squad game, because we played inter squad games almost every day. And I got an inter squad game and got some hits, and I'm like, wow, maybe I might be able to make the spring the spring trip. So that was my next goal, because we didn't play games in the fall; we played in the spring. So they took me on the spring trip, and then my goal was to actually get into a game. But so anyway, I was just kind of soaking it all in, because we had a lot of great players, and players that had come from prominent Connie Mack, American Legion programs. And these guys, their expectation essentially was to win every time they took the field. And that was, I was competitive, but I had not played on teams like that before. So that was that really, I learned a great deal about competing and winning. And our coach was a tough guy, Bud Middaugh. He was the Bobby Knight of college baseball. So he put me through, all of us, through a lot of trials and tribulations, getting us ready for the season. And it really hardened and toughened me, so that when I would later play professionally, I was never, phased by any situation. And my training was so great. These guys were phenomenal coaches. Our assistant coach is a guy named Danny Hall, who's now the winningest coach in currently in Division I baseball at Georgia Tech. So I honestly, I was lucky. I walked into a situation where I'm playing with some of the best players in the country, with the best coaches in the country, and that's why I improved so much.
Do you think that like being a walk-on like put a chip on your shoulder? Like, did you use that throughout your career as like an edge, or do you not think that it had that much of an effect?
You know what? I never felt like I had a chip on my shoulder necessarily. I think it made me work harder. I think that kind of overcoming that adversity. And listen, you have to overcome adversity as a walk on, because everyone else is ahead of you, on top of you on the totem pole. You got to scratch and claw for everything you get. So after I went through that, nothing I experienced in the minor leagues ever phased me, or the big leagues. Because my mindset was always, okay, this is what you have to do, or this is the next goal that I'm setting, and you just got to, kind of grind to get there.
So going through the draft process and eventually going to the Yankees, and like, what was it like in the minors? Like being the new kid on campus, like what was your like welcome to the league moment?
Well, when I signed, back then they basically took our whole draft class and they sent us to Oneonta, New York, and which is in the short season A, the New York Penn League. My manager was Buck Showalter, who would later manage in the big leagues for a long time. Buck was also a brilliant baseball mind. Being able to be around Buck was a real treat and an educational experience. Um, but it was a thrill. What I remember about going to Oneonta, number one, we played every day. We only had a handful of off days the whole summer. So that's the wake up call. Like, welcome to professional baseball. You're not playing 2 days, 3 days a week. You're playing 7 days a week now, and you'll get an off day in 3 weeks. That was number one. Number two, we used hand-me-down Yankee uniforms, and when I even though it was an A ball, putting on the Yankee pinstripes, because we wore Yankee uniforms. It was awesome, and there's nothing like the thrill of putting on the pinstripes, boy.
So what was then like the experience then getting called up to the majors for your first game as a Yankee?
Well, I was playing in AAA in Columbus, and even though I'm knocking on the door right there, you still never really anticipate. You're just focused on trying to play well, and I never really thought about getting that call, but I got a call um, very late. It might have been 1 in the morning from our trainer telling me that I had to get on a 7 o'clock flight to Toronto. There was connecting in Cleveland, and that's he never really said, "Hey, congratulations, you're going to the big leagues." I guess the no reason to make the implicit explicit, but then I was able to call my folks, and you know that's something that is a ball player you and your parents kind of dream about. You don't know if it's ever going to happen, but that was a pretty special moment.
So then, how was that feeling, like walking out onto the field for the first time?
I was terrified. I was scared because uh, I walked into the hotel there in Toronto, and when you're playing for the Yankees, it's a three-ring circus. There are hundreds of Yankee fans everywhere, right? But anyhow, walking into that clubhouse, this was a veteran club with a lot of Yankee greats. You know, Don Mattingly, Tommy John, Ron Guidry, um, uh, Ricky Henderson, Dave Winfield, Jack Clark, John Candelaria, Claudel Watt. I mean, all these guys were. I grew up watching all of them. So walking into that clubhouse and putting on that uniform, it was exhilarating, but pretty daunting as well.
Did any of those Yankees just have like a lasting impact on your career? Like, what was like some big lessons that like someone like Ricky Henderson or like Don Mattingly would have taught you?
Oh, so Matt Don is from Evansville, Indiana, and I'm from Munster, Indiana. And he was fantastic to me. He was the best player in the league at that time. Here I am, another first baseman. He didn't need to give me the time of day, but he went out of his way to help me and to give me feedback. I asked him a question about hitting. He'd come out there, and I remember one day he came out and watched me hit. Again, this is the MVP of the league, and you're in the big leagues. The starters come out to the field much later than the bench players because you don't want them on their feet all that time. But he came out there and watched me hit, gave me feedback. He was a special, special person and player. And my takeaway was I worked hard, but I just wasn't. These guys worked harder than I did, and I knew that I was 23. I was still filling out. I needed to get stronger, so I kind of that taught me that I needed to get into a weight room that winter.
So I guess we could talk about trade like like getting traded to Cincinnati. Like, what was your first reactions?
Well, my name had been bantied about a lot. I actually, my dad met Jerry Reinsdorf at one point in time, and Jerry told them that they had that the Yankees and the White Sox had agreed to a deal the night before, and they were exchanging medicals. They thought the deal was done, and it was Bernie Williams and me for Eric King and Steve Lyons. It would have been possibly the worst trade the Yankees ever made, or one of the worst trades. Not necessarily getting rid of me, but Bernie Williams and not getting a whole lot in return. Um, but evidently the Yankees called them back and said, no, we're going in a different direction. And that's how I ended up in Cincinnati. But I honestly didn't know a lot about the Reds. I've been following the American. Back then it was before interleague play, and I watched the American League mainly, coming up with the Yankees. But I knew, Barry Larkin was there and Chris Sabo, so two Michigan guys that I knew. So that was pretty exciting. And then Lou Piniella was there, and Lou was my mentor from New York. He had worked with me. So I was excited to get over there to be able to work with Lou.
So like after starting your career in New York with like a negative WAR both years, and what changed like then going into Cincinnati in 1990?
Well, when I was in New York, I was just pinch hitting. I don't. I think I might have started one game there, and with a designated hitter, in the American League, when you pinch hit, it's probably not a good thing because that you're the starting pitcher back then was pitching a great game, or you were going in there to face a closer. Not playing every day it's hard, especially for a young player who hasn't done it before. So when I went to Cincinnati, I just got the chance to play more. That was it. And Lou did a good job of playing me in situations that were going to be advantageous to my style of play.
So then, also I was just curious, like on your mentality, because for the first couple years, like you were bouncing around from minors to majors. Like, did that have any impact, like on you? Like, how did you mentally like bounce back from like going down and going back up?
Well, so I went back and forth in my first 2 years in the Yankee system 6 times. And honestly, at that point in time, you're just so thrilled to be there. You kind of you basically relish every moment in that living that life in the big leagues. You're flying charter planes, you're staying in 5-star hotels, you're playing in Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park. There's not a lot to not there's plenty to like about that. When you go back down to AAA, the travel's harder. You're playing, which is better because you don't want to sit young guys on the bench, because you could kind of stunt their development. That never bothered me. Now in my second year, I was a much better player. I was ready to go. I knew I was ready to play in the big leagues at that point.
So going into 1990 and starting off the season 3-0, and then like just never losing the division from there. Like you guys had the lead in the division the entire time. Did you guys like in the clubhouse feel like there was something special going on, or how,
Well,
like, describe what it was like?
they had come in second place, I think, 2 of the prior 3 years. Back again, this is back when there were only 2 divisions. So coming in second place was a big deal. Um, so they knew they were talent. There was talent in that clubhouse. And in our first day, when we got in there, when the pitchers and catchers were already there. When the position players showed up, Lou Piniella sat us down and said, "Hey guys, there is talent in this room, and we could win. And I expect us to win." And that was our expectation from day one. We were young, we were aggressive, we could run, we played good defense, we had a good pitching staff. We had all the parts we needed to do it. We got locked out of spring training that year, and we started off the year in Houston because typically Cincinnati was always the first team to play on opening day. But we had an abbreviated spring training. I think because we were young, we were ready to play. We were in shape, good to go, and we just came out of the chute, and we went 9-0, and no one ever caught us.
Yeah. What were those playoffs like? Like just that anticipation, were you like nervous at all, especially as like a young player going in?
Yeah, I was nervous. In fact, that series against the National Championship Series against the Pirates was the closest series since I think 1920. There was never any more than a 3-run lead. So it was a very tight series. But like I said, having played in Michigan, I had been through it. I had been through some, high stakes games before. And I liked it. It was exciting. Was it nerve wracking? Oh yeah, but it was exciting at the same time. The World Series, we took a few days off. I was probably more nervous in the World Series than I was the championships. The National Championship Series. But we had some cool customers on that team, and I kind of followed their lead.
So then, can you take us through that World Series? Like, what was that experience like? Because like not many players get to play in a World Series.
Well, we were huge underdogs. Oakland had played in the World Series the prior 2 years. They had lost to the Dodgers, and they had beaten the Giants. Now they swept Boston. In the American League Championship Series, and so they had some time off, so I think they were a little bit flat coming out. But we got off to a quick start in Cincinnati. Eric Davis hit a solo home run off Dave Stewart in the first game, and again that kind of set the tone. We were a team that was really well built for the playoffs. Why? We had power arms, we had a phenomenal bullpen, we had a great defensive team, and we could run, and we had a lot of contact hitters. So those are all elements that usually play well in the playoffs. So we weren't too, as a group, we weren't very nervous. And walking, I remember the day before the first, or the day of our first game in Cincinnati, Lou Piniella and Tony Perez walked into our dining room, our food room. All of us were in there. And they said, "Hey, we're going to win this thing, fellas." And we believed them.
So then what was that like when the final out happened? Like what were your like initial reaction?
Yeah, hard to describe, really hard to describe. Even, here it is, 35 years later. And whenever I think about that, I kind of get chills. It was hard to describe. Again, it's like getting called up to the big leagues for the first time. It's something that you dream about, and then when it actually happens, it's kind of overwhelming. And because you go to spring training in February, you actually start training in November. So you've been working at this, obviously your whole life, but for that particular year, you've been out there traveling and grinding for a long time. So the kind of the manifestation of having everything, climax in this one moment when and you win, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's an experience that not many people can say that they have. So then going into the next couple of years, like you started to become really like good hitter. You were the Reds MVP in 1994. And speaking of the 1994 season, so you were leading the league in hits going into the All-Star break, and you had a 358 RBI. I mean, not RBI, hitting percentage. But you didn't get selected to the All-Star team. That
Yeah.
like, how did that make you feel? Like,
Yeah, that's that was a tough blow. To this day, I deserved to have made the All Star team that year. Jim Fregosi took Andres Galarraga. He was having a good year. In this day and age, they take more players, but that one was tough. I really thought that I merited getting named to that team, but again, Kirk Gibson never made an All-Star team. They're a guy that happens to you guys. It just it was kind of a tough break. But that was the best year of my career, '94, personally. But we went out on strike, and which was a big disappointment, and who knows what would have come of that.
also just like speaking of hitting, like you still have the MLB record for first baseman hitting streak. What was your thought process when you were going through that? Like, were you nervous at all? Like, did you have any like rituals?
No, actually, it's funny. So that I had a hitting streak that carried over 2 seasons. I hit 29 games to finish the season, and then I hit in 3 the next year. But I actually had a hitting streak close to 15 games. I think I hit in something like I don't know, 43 out of 45 games. I got one of my streaks, the first streak broken because they pinch hit me one night. They didn't play me; they were giving me a night to rest, and they pinch hit me, which was that call was kind of debatable, when I'm sitting on that kind of hitting streak. But I felt, it was the end of the year, so I was fatigued, I was a little tired. I felt great at the plate. I felt like I could flip a ball into left field whenever I wanted to. And I honestly, again, it ended at 29. I had 29 games. If I had another month, I think I could have run it up there some more. I felt that good at the plate. And no, I never. It's funny. I was usually pretty relaxed at the plate. I never got too anxious, so I felt pretty good at that time.
Speaking of at the plate, you continuously pop up on my For You page whenever I get top five most abnormal swings in
Yeah.
MLB history. Can you just describe like your hitting stance, or why did it work for you, or did any trainer ever tell you to like do something else?
Well, it was my feet that my feet my swing actually I think was pretty nice. I think I had a pretty picturesque swing, but my feet were unusual, you know. So um, when I was with the Yankees there, you know, Don Mattingly told me, he said, "Hey, listen, if you want the ball in, get on top of the plate because the pitcher's gonna think you're trying to cover the outside half of the plate. But you actually, if you want it in, get up on the plate and then look in. And if he said if you want it away, get off the plate because they're going to see you and they're going to think that you're trying to cover the ball in the inside part of the plate. Okay, but it's exactly you're kind of playing games with the pitcher. So I started tinkering with getting off the plate and then diving in, you know. And Lou Piniella wanted me to get more rhythm at the plate, so he kind of taught me to march at the box. I didn't hit like that when I was in college. I hit out of a low crouch when I was in college. I did not move my feet. If you see any clips of me in the minor leagues and in college, high school, I was not doing that. So that's kind of how that developed. Um, but you know, um, I would have tried it at home. I don't know how well it would work for a lot of people.
Yeah, certainly, certainly an interesting way to use your feet. Can you just take us through like the final like 95, 96 season and then like just like why did you sign with the Royals?
Well, I went to Kansas City in '98, and the reason being, I became a free agent, and I came very close to signing with the Giants, but I ended up wanting to stay in Cincinnati. I resigned with Cincinnati. I was there for a couple more years. Um, 96, 97. They let me go in 98 and I signed a 1 year deal with Kansas City. I enjoyed my time in Kansas City. We had a lot of great players on that team. Johnny Damon, Carlos Beltran, Jermaine Dye, Mike Sweeney. We had a heck of an offense. Jeff King, Jeff Conine. Um, if you go back and look at the players on that team, it was a good offense, boy. Um, but enjoyed my time there. But then eventually, then I came back to Cincinnati, and the next year was back there for a year and a half.
So then, yeah, you re-signed with Cincinnati, eventually retired in 2000. And one fun fact to the audience, Hal Morris is one of two players, with the other one being Derek Jeter, to finish off their career with a RBI. Like, what was that like then stepping off the field for the final time? Like, were you
I,
sad? Like,
I didn't know that was going to be my final at bat in the big leagues. But what happened was we were playing and I pinch hit. I don't even recall who we were playing against, but I pinch hit in the ninth inning, and I got a base hit to left, and the game was over. So we won the game. Um, I think Jeter and I are the two players to have walk off game winning hits in the final at bat of their career. So it honestly, I was kind of bookended it well from bookended my career because my first at bat in the big leagues, I got a base hit to left off of Dwayne Ward, and then my last at bat, I got a base hit to left. And it ended up winning the game. So and that was kind of what I was known for, hitting line drive. So it kind of fitting, I guess.
so then after you retire, you go back to Michigan, then you go to Stanford. Obviously, not a dumb person at all. Um, then you go back into baseball. Like, was that always like a plan for you to go back into baseball and like go into scouting?
Never thought about it, to be honest with you. That was not on my that was not on my bingo card. I went to I finished my undergrad and I went to business school. And when I was coming out of Stanford, myself and a few other guys worked on some real estate. We worked on some real estate deals, and we had an office. It was across the street from the ballpark in San Francisco. It was on Townsend, and right next, literally across the street. Um, So I was kind of, it's hard for players when they retire. It's not an easy transition because you miss playing so much. So I really didn't watch a game for several years. Didn't even think about baseball. But I got invited to go to a game, and there, I think they called it AT&T Park at the time in San Francisco, and went to the game and I enjoyed it, and decided I was wanting to do, think about getting back into the game, and that's how I started scouting. I went over, and Billy Bean's a friend of mine, and I played against Billy in the minor leagues, and he said, "Hey, I think you might like scouting," so he kind of got me started down that path.
So then what does it mean to be a major league scout? Like what did you do? And like to the rest of us, like me, for example, I don't know that much like about like what scouting is like in the MLB. Like what do you do? Like what do you look for?
Well, there are kind of three silos in the scouting world. There are amateur scouts. Amateur scouts scout high school, junior college, college players. You have professional scouts that scout the professional game, minor leagues, big leagues, international, play at times. And then you have the international scouts. These are the guys that are down in the Dominican, Venezuela, and they're scouting down there. So I started off doing amateur work for 2 years, where I was watching, high school and college players and JC guys. I enjoyed that a great deal. Then I was hired I worked for Pittsburgh for 2 years. And I was hired by the Red Sox and Theo Epstein's last year in Boston, and was a pro scout there. So I was covering professional teams. I like I had the Angel system, so I basically scouted all the players in their system. And then I was hired by the Angels as their pro scouting director. So then I oversaw all the professional scouts and helped to train them.
So what would you say to all like the high school baseball players or college players? Like what is like something that they might not know that they need to work on, or like they might not know is like a big deal that like you would like look for in a player?
Well, number one, I would tell them all to enjoy the experience. It's going to go by very quickly, and the probability of any of them playing professionally is small. So have fun. Don't take it too seriously. It's a game. But as the one thing that you can control as a player is your effort. So when we'd come to the ballpark, we were always there early because we wanted to observe everything that the players did. I'm talking about amateur players. So I'm watching the second they get off the bus or the second they show up at the ballpark. I'm watching how they go about their business. I'm watching how they prepare. I'm watching their body language. I'm seeing how they interact with their teammates. But I want to see their effort when they're out there on the field. That's the big thing, because I don't care how talented you are. If you don't work hard and play hard, that it's unlikely the clubs are going to have interest in you. And I can assure you, when we would sit in these draft rooms and we're putting the board together to draft, to handle our drafts, there were a bunch of players, the guys that had really kind of freaky athletic ability that were kind of didn't have great makeup, off the field, and we'd pass on those guys. Now clubs would take them later, or take a flyer, but they always were a little bit concerned about those guys.
So just final question, like what do you think is the biggest difference then between when you were playing and like now, like in baseball?
Well, I think that there's so much technology in the game now, that the development of players has changed drastically. Maybe for the better, maybe not for the better, right? Yeah, I talk to hitters now, and I sometimes have a hard time understanding what they're talking about, because we had a much different nomenclature, and we thought about the game a lot differently, but certainly the velocity and the stuff in the game has improved. But that being said, the art of pitching, I think, is being lost to a certain degree, because now, back when I was playing, starters they would get in there. The pitch counts now limits how long these guys are going to pitch. When I was playing, these guys would pitch into the sixth, seventh inning. Their pitch count would get up to over 150 pitches. Now these guys throw the whole kitchen sink at you, and if they last 5 innings, they're excited. But that's how the game's changed because but the stuff in the bullpen's crazy these days. But the one other big difference is I think the umpiring is much better. Back when I was playing, the strike zone was pretty big, and that was just the norm. That was kind of the convention because they were trying to speed the game along and play quicker games. Now that with all the technology, the umpires are graded. And I think they do an amazing job now. Not that the umpires were bad when I was playing. It's just that they had a bigger strike zone, and we all knew it. But so the stuff's better now, but they got to throw it over the plate.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Hal, for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Can't wait for the next one.